One of my most anticipated games of this year is the Grand Return of... Oh wait, Tomb Raider got delayed. Hang on, let me rephrase this. Right now, my most anticipated game of 2026 is the Grand Return of Castlevania, as we finally get a brand new Metroidvania installment after Order of Ecclesia, which was released back in 2008. Almost 20 years ago. Which, ironically enough, was the same time gap between Fusion and Dread. And to celebrate this amazing return of what would say is Konami's flagship franchise, I decided to finally dive into the Metroidvania Castlevania games this year after losing interest every time I decided to pick up Symphony of the Night, only to finally master its RetroAchievements set this year. Which only took me 3 years to master, but you know, it's the thought that counts. And as much as I want to dissect Symphony of the Night and mention my problems with it, let's go back to 1986 and begin with the Castlevania franchise by mastering the game that started this amazing franchise. By getting all 74 achievements on the NES version of Castlevania 1, which can be only obtained thanks to the RetroAchievements website, which allows you to get achievements for your favorite retro games from the NES to the Nintendo Wii with everything in between. And as usual, we'll be getting these achievements in hardcore mode, which is the only way to master these games. So for this mastery, we must do a bunch of challenge runs which involve playing the game in different ways, which may sound intimidating or straight up annoying. But in the end, it will present an interesting way of playing through the original Castlevania, which will help you practice and get better at the game in a way that makes the game more enjoyable and also prepare you for more difficult types of challenges. But more on those later. So, if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more RetroAchievement Masteries, and don't forget to check my Wolf Archives channel for the full playthroughs. My name is Jonathan Wolf, and I'm on a quest to prove to the world that I'm good at video games by mastering retro games. And let's anticipate the release of Belmont's Curse by mastering the very first Castlevania. So the story of this game is incredibly simplistic and can be summarized in one sentence. You play as Simon Belmont, the next in line of the Belmont clan, and it is your duty as the Belmont to cleanse the land of the forces of darkness and their evil ruler, Count Dracula. We will get more backstory about the Belmonts and their eternal feud with Dracula in future games, specifically in Lament of Innocence for the PlayStation 2, but for right now, the story is simple. You're a dude, and you get to kill the vampire dude. So like I said at the beginning, we must complete a bunch of challenge runs as we raid Dracula's humble abode. And I'll go in the order that I beat them in order to have a more structured video, which for this game, we must do at the very least 3 playthroughs in order to master this game with the least amount of retries. But for the sake of my sanity, I decided to make 4 playthroughs with each one having a specific objective that will make this mastery more doable and also enjoyable. Starting off with our first playthrough, I decided to start with the run that requires the most planning, an all items run, where we must raid Dracula's castle by destroying every candle and uncover all the secret walls and secret treasures, which will help you in the long run when tackling the more scary achievements in the future. And because this will be our first playthrough, I'll go in some detail for every stage. So starting off in the entrance of the castle, we can hit these candles in order to upgrade our whip, the Vampire Killer, where we can turn it from a leather whip to a Morning Star, and grab another upgrade to increase its length. So the way whip upgrades work in this game, the first candle you hit will always give you a whip upgrade, and by collecting either a big heart or 5 small hearts, the next candle you hit will contain the third whip upgrade. And because we can get a big heart at the very beginning, we can get both upgrades before entering the castle, as well as our first sub-weapon, the Knife. But in this first screen, we also have one of the hardest jumps of the game, as we must jump over the entryway of the castle in order to spawn our first secret treasure and pop our first item achievement. There is an achievement for uncovering and collecting every single one of these hidden treasures in one go with no continues, but because I'm confident I'll most likely won't get that achievement because... And... Oh my god, I just brain farted there, nice. It's me who's playing it. I won't bother about it for now. So once we clear out the entrance, we head inside Dracula's castle and go through the main hall, where we fight ghoulish ghouls, scary panthers, and more candles for more achievements. For the most part, every candle is accessible to Simon as he struts through the castle, but every once in a while there'll be candles that'll be out of reach where you need a specific sub-weapon in order to get them, or in the worst case scenario, there'll be certain items that will be hidden in walls that you must whip in order to uncover them and get the item achievement, like this block at the end of the Panther section which contains a bag of money, which will help us get our next achievement of the game. So this game has 6 different stages, with every stage having 3 blocks each. But for some reason, every time you go to a new block, the stage number changes. In other words, once we reach this door, we will now be in stage 2. But for the sake of this video, I'll refer to the different levels as stages and the different sections of a level as if this was a Mario game. So for 1-2, we have this cellar where we go underground and face a bunch of mermen that could surprise you from below. But as long as you keep strutting forward, you'll avoid having fish up your ass. But before heading down with the fish, we break this wall and get our first wall meat, which will recover 6 energy points for every pot roast we eat. But also help us work on the item achievement, since destroying these walls will actually increase our item count. And as for the merman cave, if we destroy these blocks and dock on this lonely platform, we can spawn our next hidden treasure and then get the rest of the candles for our next completion achievements. 1-3, we go back to the regular hallway and fight more ghouls while drinking an invincibility potion, which will help us avoid the ghouls and reach the end where we can get the last of the candles and get the last item achievement of stage 1 as we reach the first boss, the Phantom Bat. Not Dracula, as some people may think. Now, before reaching the boss, in block 2, I got a stopwatch sub-weapon that will allow Simon to freeze all enemies for a couple of seconds for every 5 hearts. And by using the stopwatch against these ghouls before the boss, we can get an achievement by killing 20 enemies while the time is frozen. And as for the boss, we can get an axe sub-weapon right before this oversized flying rat, and by destroying this block next to the stairs, we can get a double shot, which will allow us to throw 2 axes at the same time. And with the double axe, we can attempt to defeat the Phantom Bat without taking damage. Every boss has a damageless achievement as well as a bonus achievement with the exception of the final boss. And for the Phantom Bat, we have the bonus challenge of defeating this oversized bat with the knife sub-weapon you can get at the very beginning of the game. But because we lost the knife sub-weapon because I wanted to get the stopwatch achievement, we focus on the damageless run instead. Let's break this. And oh my god, I hit the stair, nice. Now, even though we failed to get the damageless achievement, we still have plenty of opportunities to get it since we do have other playthroughs we must do. Little did I know that you can actually use the stopwatch to completely cheese this fight, but what do I know? I just play video games because I'm stupid. But as a compromise, we do get our very first deathless achievement for beating stage 1 without dying. For stage 2, we hit up some church towers as we fight some spear knights and dark bats. Spear knights are the first enemies that take more than 1 hit from the vampire killer to kill. But to compensate for that, these guys are incredibly passive and pose no threat whatsoever. They just walk around. In this first screen, we can also get our next hidden treasure by destroying this wall and standing in the dark void in order to spawn a crown. And as we head up the stairs, we can use the cross sub-weapon to get rid of the bat and candles, break this block for a double shot, and get our next item achievement. 2-2 introduces us to the dreaded Medusa heads. But as long as you keep moving or stand still as they spawn, these floating heads are not as annoying as they sound. Oh my god! For the most part. And in this hall, we can stand on this platform to spawn our next hidden treasure and hit more candles with our cross to get a triple shot for our boomerang in order to get another achievement. Similar to whip upgrades, in order to get shot multipliers, you can either get them in secret walls, or by hitting 10 enemies with a sub-weapon, after the 10th hit, if you destroy a candle that would give you a heart, it will drop a shot multiplier, which will be very important information when we get to certain levels and bosses for a particular achievement we'll get later in this video. So going up the stairs, we have more Medusa heads and candles that may cause death if not careful. But with speed and precision, we can fight our way, break this block for a wall meat, and finish the second block of stage 2 with all items acquired. 2-3 starts with a wall meat at the beginning, for some reason, only to be followed by me getting a brain fart. And oh my god, I just brain farted there, nice. But besides that, we can grind a double shot for the holy water with this ghost or bone towers, get a triple shot from this block, as well as our first score achievement after reaching 30,000 points, as well as getting fully decked out for another achievement. And once we get fully decked out, we stand on the 4th window of the final room in order to erect the next hidden treasure and get the final item achievement of stage 2. And as for the boss, we have Queen Medusa, which flies around the ground while vomiting some snake children. And for the boss challenge, we must defeat the Queen without killing her children. Oh, damn it, I killed the snake. Yeah, I should have just used the whip. Ah, whatever. For stage 3, we go outside and go through some catwalks as we make our way higher up the castle. 3-1, we get introduced to the monkey! As we have these fleamen that may or may not be the most obnoxious enemy of the game. Oh, you gotta be fucking kidding me. You gotta be fucking kidding me. How? But besides the jumping monkeys, we have a very early pod roast for some reason again, as well as skeletons that give Hammer Bros from Mario 1 a run for their money as the true final boss of the game. And as we climb the stairs, we get attacked by some rabid bird, which we can easily get rid of them as we can literally despawn them by having them off screen the moment they get off their perch, and crouch on this edge to uncover our next hidden treasure. And as we reach the end, we ditch the holy water for the axe as we need it in order to get a candle in the next screen. 3-2, we have another walkway with Medusa heads, but by strutting without jumping or doing any sudden movements, we can basically ignore the Medusa heads, use the axe to break this top candle which otherwise we couldn't reach, and get a boomerang, which is going to be a very helpful weapon against the boss and its boss challenge. Going up the stairs, we crouch on this spot for the next hidden treasure, and then use the cross on these annoying bone towers in order to get our hit counter up for shot multipliers, as we get the remaining candles as we head over to the final block of stage 3. And finally, we have 3-3, which is a very simple walkway to the boss where we have more birds, bone towers, and Medusa heads, as we have a visual of Dracula's lair in the background. And once we reach the end, we walk up to this block to spawn an impossible treasure, break this block for a pot roast, and get the last candles as we prepare to fight our next boss, the Mummy Men, where we have the challenge of beating this toilet paper duo in less than 10 seconds. Alright, so here we have a very annoying achievement. Hey, we did it. Nice. Stage 4, we drop down into the catacombs and have to escape the Merman Cave that will not cause pain and suffering in a future revisit to Dracula's castle. This is not the worst stage of the game. I don't know what you're talking about. This stage fucking blows because of that. When it comes to the all items achievement, stage 4 is unironically the easiest stage of the game, as 4-1 has no secrets, 4-2 has no items at all, so it's basically a free pass, and 4-3 is as easy as 4-1. The hardest part of 4-1 is getting the candles on the moving platforms, as you must jump while the platform is moving in order to prevent having swimming classes and hit the candles that are above Simon. That said, once you get the holy water, you can throw it and get the candles that require jumping, and you'll get past this stage no problem. 4-2 is the only stage of the game that has no items, so we just strut our way through the Fleaman Hall as we have birds dropping monkeys that will try to mess you up. And in this hallway, we can grind some Fleamen and hopefully get an axe, as this axe will not only help us for the boss challenge of the stage, but the axe is actually required if you want to get the item achievement in 5-1. So once we go into 4-3 and fight some bone dragons that might be contender for most obnoxious enemies of the game. I'm starting to see a pattern right here. And as we defeat these bone dragons, we get some shot multipliers, but we also destroy the origin points of the dragons in order to get a pot roast as well as a big heart. And we can axe the final candles in order to get the achievement before we fight the next boss. Or Frankenstein, except that they couldn't name it Frankenstein because copyright, baby. Frank is what I would say is the first hard boss if you don't cheese it with the holy water, because the holy water is completely broken. And it's all because of Igor. This fucker will jump around the arena throwing fireballs, all while Frank dances around, bumping you at the worst time. And as for the challenge of this boss, we must do the grindy task of hitting Igor 10 times without stun locking him before we kill the creature, who is the main boss. You can try to get this with the whip, but I'm going to beg you to get the axe, since the axe will help you get Igor while he super jumps around the arena. And with perfect positioning, you can stun Igor as he heads down towards Simon. And as long as you don't kill Frank early, this achievement is honestly really... Oh no! Oh. I just had to open my mouth, didn't I? Stage 5 is my favorite stage of the game, as we enter the dungeons and have the biggest skill check of Simon's quest in order to defeat Dracula. The first half of 5-1 is very easy, especially if you have the axe, as you can snipe the skellies and continue no problem. And once we reach this set of stairs, we ignore the stairs and run towards this wall in order to get a very rare 1-up, as well as a secret block directly above the stairs. And once we reach this hall with some blood skeletons, which act as dry bones from Mario, here is where we need the axe, as we have these high candles that are simply impossible to reach. A part of me does think that you could use a boomerang and chase it backwards in order to get the candles, but I have never tested this method, so go with the safer and more secure axe method and be careful with the flea man at the end. Even though there is a delicious wall meat waiting for you at the end of the block, but at the same time, don't risk death, because if you die, you lose your sub weapon, which means that if you didn't get the achievement, you basically have to reset the game in order to get another axe. 5-2, we get introduced to the Axe Knights, which are the tankiest enemies of the game and require the biggest amount of skill to defeat, especially towards the end, but we'll get to that later. But in this room, we can also get an axe at the end, which is a huge flick to the nuts. But it's also a good thing, as we need an axe for the next block. And in this block, we can also get a whopping 3 hidden treasures by standing in this crevice for a couple of seconds, stand in this corner for a couple seconds, and jump to this platform for the final hidden treasure of the stage. And we also have a hidden wall over here in order to get a shot multiplier or to just increase the item count. And as we head our way to 5-3, we have what I would like to call the AFK Bone Tower, as well as some pot roast, which will be very important, as going up the stairs, we have the hall before the boss, what many consider to be the hardest room of the game, as we have 2 Axe Knights and a relentless assault of Medusa heads. Thankfully, by crouching and throwing axes, we can defeat the Axe Knights and avoid the Medusa heads no problem, while dealing with the top candles and almost fuck up the candle achievement. Alright, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die to death, there's no way. Get the candle, Simon. Okay, yeah, there we go. So with the item achievement acquired, we go to the boss, the Grim Reaper himself, Death. Death is without question the hardest fight of the game. And the sole reason as to why is the hardest is because of his sights, which spawn randomly throughout the arena and chase you down as you try to beat the Reaper. And for this playthrough, I decided to get the boss challenge for Death, where we must defeat Dracula's roommate without destroying more than 10 sights and without having the Holy Water sub-weapon. You can try to do this achievement whip only, but I would recommend you bring the cross from the first room in 5-3 in order to hit Death from a distance while you avoid the sights coming for your corpse. Oh! Get it! Yes! Oh my god, I did it! So we finally reach stage 6, where we have the final approach before the Count himself. Starting with 6-1, we have the broken bridge where we get assaulted by some phantom bats, where we have the only bonus task of the game, where we must defeat 3 bats in this bridge before moving on to the next area. The first bat you fight is easily the hardest one, as you must deal with its random movement and sudden fireballs. Not to mention that he now does 4 points of damage instead of 2. But once you defeat the first bat, we can get the stopwatch and use it against the 2 remaining bats for the achievement, which is extra helpful if you go for all candles as well. Hey, there you go. 6-2 is the dreaded clock tower, where we have the final line of defense with these scaly bastards and more birds dropping monkeys like turds. And here we have what I would say is the hardest item achievement of the run, as you not only have to reveal this pot roast and risk getting assaulted by Fleaman, but once we go down the stairs, we must crouch on this gear to spawn the final hidden treasure of the game, but also hit this candle floating on the abyss while dealing with Fleaman and birds. Stop getting on the ladder. And this is where the stopwatch becomes almost mandatory if you want to have an easier time without getting knocked into the abyss. Wow, okay. So hit this, and then fast go down. Oh, that was stupid. Alright. Okay, so that candle over there, that is the true final boss, because... Alright, use the thing. And that should be it, right? Yes, that's it. So yeah, that candle, like, in the pit is like the hardest thing in the world. But with all the items acquired, we reach the grand staircase and get into the final boss of the game, Count Dracula, and also get the final item achievement. Count Dracula can be difficult. However, with pattern recognition, this fight is incredibly easy. Phase 1 is definitely the hardest part of the fight, while Phase 2 can be free if you know how to use the holy water. And to end this first playthrough, I decided to go for the damages achievement against the Count in order to get it out of the way. The hardest part about Phase 1 is his teleporting attack, as he can teleport literally inside you and telefrag you in the worst case scenario. Although, unlike Doom, it's not an instant death. After he teleports, he will launch some fireballs after he opens his cloak, and the fireballs will go depending the position of Simon, so if you're mid-air, he will throw them upwards. The best way to consistently dodge the fireballs, jump a couple frames after the cloak opens, since the fireballs will already have a determined trajectory and you'll be able to dodge them no problem. And as the fight begins, we can also throw a holy water at Dracula's feet in order to build up the hit count and get a free double shot, which is going to be very beneficial against the second phase. And as for the best way to avoid the teleporting attack, well, similar to Kabula's damageless run from Kirby's Dream Land, we have to rely on the good old friend of pause buffering. Now, it is possible to do this without pause buffering, but you need to be incredibly fast on your reflexes, and also make sure that you do not stall. But by jumping over his fireballs, making sure he doesn't telefrag us, and hitting his big old nose, by doing enough damage, we whip his head into the stratosphere and get... the Cookie Monster! This fight can be very difficult in the worst case, but by alternating between whipping his goofy face and throwing holy water at his feet, by the holy power of ass, we can defeat this fuckness damageless and finish off our first venture into Dracula's castle. So yeah, the reason why double shot is enough is because we can just jump, hit, and we can just stun lock him to death. And there we go! That is it for Dracula Damageless, and that's it for our first playthrough of Castlevania 1. So with our first playthrough done, we can now move on to our next challenge, where we must beat the game using only the Vampire Killer. This may sound scary, especially on the later stages, but overall, because most enemies die to one hit from the Vampire Killer, with very small exceptions, the only challenge about this challenge would be the bosses. Stage 1 is very simple, and the Phantom Bat is only annoying because of its random movements, but overall, it's really easy. Queen Medusa is also easy, but for this run, I decided to go for the boss challenge, which can be easily done if you stand on this ledge since her snake minions can get up to you, but because Medusa likes to stay low on the ground, trying to hit her is more difficult, forcing you to head out and fight the snake like a man, which will not only give us the boss challenge, with granted one hit from death, but we also get the Deathless achievement alongside the whip only achievement for stage 2. As for stage 3, the bone towers are the most annoying thing of the level, especially this one at the end of block 2 and the last one before the boss. But thankfully the mummies are a cakewalk, and it's only because you can take the high ground by standing on the block that has the pot roast and snipe them with your whip, making this fight what I would say is the easiest whip only fight of the game. Even though I failed the damages achievement, but what can you do about some deadly toilet paper? Stage 4 is not hard until you get to the Bone Dragons before Frank. And here we have our first hard fight of the whip only one, where we must pray to every god that Igor doesn't screw you over with his random pattern and fireballs while you whip Frank to death. In the end, my biggest advice is to try to reach Frank with full health and just go to town with him, making sure you avoid most of Igor's attacks and hopefully win this battle of attrition. But now we have stage 5, where the first 2 sections are completely doable, where you can even train against Axe Knights in preparation for the Death Hallway. And as for the hall itself, my best advice for anyone who is attempting this challenge, as long as you stay in one position and duck, the Medusa heads will never hit you. And as long as you inch towards the Axe Knights while hitting them with the whip, the hallway before death is really not that bad. And as for the best way to deal with Medusa heads while you get the Axe Knights, jump over the heads the moment they get close to you in order to inch your way closer to the knights, as the Axe Knights will always be at a distance where you can't hit them with the whip. Wow, okay. So I believe it takes 9 hits to kill an X-Knight. But now we have Death Whip only, and this is the make or break part that will determine if you're a Castlevania master. For this fight, I use a strategy by Agent Wyvern, which I'll link in the description below, where as soon as Death appears, we chase him around in order to have a constant movement pattern by the Grim Reaper himself, where the only obstacles in your way are his sight that may randomly spawn in your face. This fight does have some trial and error, but as long as you practice and find a consistent pattern, this fight is completely doable using only the whip, and honestly, one of the most satisfying moments in the entire game. Now to die, because that's my luck. Oh, I did again? Oh no! Oh my god. Imagine I did that no damage. Oh my god, that would have been beautiful. That would have been beautiful. And finally, we have Stage 6, where we have an achievement for making it past the clock tower and another for defeating Dracula, which means that you don't have to do the whole stage in one go. Man, wouldn't that be stupid that if you get a game over on Dracula, you have to reset the game in order to do that level again? That would be really stupid, wouldn't it? The bridge is a complete joke, assuming the bats behave, and as for the tower itself, just tank the crows at the beginning and keep resetting the next room until the first bird comes from the left. And with proper timing, you'll have a clean path to the grand staircase with little resistance. And as for Dracula Whip only, phase 1 is basically the same as the Damsel's achievement. Just make sure you jump when he opens his cloak and be sure to not get telefragged. And as for Cookie Monster, crouch in front of him to trigger a high jump when you get stuck on a corner, and every time he stretches his legs after a jump, start jumping and whipping as you'll be able to destroy his fireballs that he spits at you. And by repeating this process, you'll defeat the Prince of Darkness and beat the game using the Vampire Killer and complete what I would say is the easiest of the challenge runs. As crazy as that sounds, since the only thing that I find hard about this challenge is Frankenstein and death. I'm dead. I'm not dead, wow. Yes! We did it! I danced with the devil. And I killed the Cookie Monster. So now that we can prove that we can kill everything with our trusty whip, now we must do the complete opposite. As our third playthrough, we must beat every level using only sub-weapons. Now we can use the whip to uncover wall meat and hit candles, but for this challenge, any damage we do to enemies must be from sub-weapons. And this is for me the worst of the challenge runs, mainly because of the fact that you not only must keep your heart count high, but you must make sure that you don't accidentally fire too many sub-weapons and kill or hit an enemy with the whip by complete accident. But as long as you stick with a particular sub-weapon and take advantage of the double and triple shot, this challenge is really not that bad. Now the good thing is that you can... Mostly. Stage 1 is very easy, and for this level we can use any sub-weapon. Well, except for the stopwatch, for obvious reasons. And for this run, I also started to work on the sub-weapon kill achievement, where we must kill 20 enemies with every sub-weapon without using a continue. You can easily grind the knife, holy water, and axe kills in this level, as you'll have plenty of hearts to kill 20 enemies with each weapon before you even fight the boss. But as we make our way to the end, I also decided to finally get the Damsel's achievement with the Phantom Bat. Come on. So because this stupid flying rat was not cooperating, I decided to reset the game and work on the boss challenge, where we must defeat the bat with the knife. And you'll never believe what happens next. The moment I go for the boss achievement, he decides to not only go the opposite way to where I'm at, but also he decided to be incredibly passive. This game sucks. Jesus fucking Christ. And we got it. Stage 2 has a bump in difficulty, but with the cross and good jumping skills, we can get past the Medusa heads and deal with the Spear Knights no problem. Oh my god. I don't believe it. Oh, and also I fucked up the sub-weapon only achievement. God damn it. Okay, new plan. Since we got the Phantom Bat boss achievement, I decided to quickly run through stage 1 again and farm the sub-weapon kill achievement so that we can arrive at stage 2, where we just need to farm kills for the cross, which I ended up doing no problem in this room, followed by an amazing display of my abilities as a Castlevania expert. Alright, so there we go, that's the achievement. Now, here's the... oh, well, no. Oh, never mind. And as for the boss, because we can get the holy water with a triple shot, if you know anything about this game, you know exactly where this is going. Stage 3 is another easy stage, with these bone towers being the hardest part about it, since you must take care of them before moving on to the boss. And this is the point where sticking with the holy water is practically mandatory, as it will help you deal with the more annoying enemies and every boss before Dracula. And as for the mummy duo, similar to the whip only run, just take the high ground and bless them with the holiest of waters. The power of P. Stage 4 is the hardest stage of this challenge, and it's all because of two reasons: the Fleeman walkway and the two bone dragons before Frank. If you're confident you can defeat Frank with the knife you get before the boss, I would recommend you get the stopwatch at the start, since it will be a godsend on the Fleeman walkway. But for this run, I decided to stick with the holy water because I am not fighting Frank legit. So because I'm stubborn and wanted to continue with the holy water, how the hell do we get past the Fleeman when... oh my god, fuck right off. This could happen. What I do is have the Fleeman jump over Simon if they drop in front of me, since they will always do it the moment they drop from the bird, and then I throw a holy water so that the monkey jumps into the fire, making it an almost straight path to the end. Now sometimes they will get through, and because in the worst case you will not have a shot multiplier, you actually need to wait for the fire to go away in order to throw another holy water. But as long as you take your time, this one is completely doable. And as for the bone dragons, if I have enough health, I just jump past the first dragon and kill it from behind in order to get the wall meat, and then I throw holy water the moment the second dragon activates so that we can stun him to death. Which thankfully, the second bone dragon decided to behave, which led to an easy victory against Frank that will not screw me over in... oh, what the hell? Oh, you gotta be fucking kidding me. You gotta be fucking kidding me. How? So, after making it back again, I made sure I didn't try to get the boss challenge and the sub-weapon only achievements at the same time like a complete dumbass, and just went for the easy kill in order to get not only the damages achievement, but also get the final deathless achievement of the game. So thank God for that. Stage 5 is unironically one of, if not the easiest stage to complete using only sub-weapons. If you keep the holy water through the whole stage, the Axe Knights will be a complete pushover. Assuming you can get past this douchebag of a bone tower, which, oh my god, this thing is as stupid as the shotgunners from Tomb Raider 2. And yes, you bet your ass I'll keep bringing up the goddamn shotgunners from Tomb Raider 2. But after that scandal, we make it very easily through the Death Hall, no problem, thanks to our good positioning and use of holy water. And then we have the death fight. Time for death. Oh my god, that was so difficult. Finally, we have stage 6, where just like the whip only achievement, is split into two sections. For the Grand Bridge and Clock Tower, you just want to get lucky with the bats and hope that no Fleeman drops you into the pit. I would recommend you get the stopwatch on the bridge and do a similar strategy to the item achievement, but with patience and kind of repeating the same trick as the whip only run, you'll push through to the Grand Staircase and face off against the Count. And as for Dracula, here we have what I would say is the worst sub-weapon achievement of the run, as we must begin to experience the sheer terror that is the Metroidvania Castlevania RetroAchievements sets by doing a shit ton of grinding. as you must get a lot of hearts. For this fight, you could use the holy water, but the MVP for this fight will be the cross, as it does more damage, can hit Dracula multiple times, and you don't need to be on the Count's face in order to throw it. But before we face the Count, we must grind for hearts by going down the stairs and up again in order to respawn the candles and get up to 60 to 70 hearts, so that we not only can defeat both forms of Dracula, but also have some security against his fireballs, and also grind for some shot multipliers. For phase 1, you can get a free hit, and once he starts teleporting, my advice is to stay in one of the edges and start throwing crosses above and below in an alternate pattern in order to not only multi-hit Dracula, but also destroy his fireballs with the low cross. And if he gets in your face, time your jump as he opens his cloak and you'll avoid damage no problem. And as for Cookie Monster, just repeat the whip only strategy, but keep a distance from him, as the last thing you want is to accidentally hit Dracula with your whip, causing you to redo the grind and attempt phase 1 again. Which, the worst thing about this achievement is the grind itself, because this is a bad omen for the Metroidvania Castlevania sets. Because if that happens, you're basically screwed. But there we go. We did it. So with Dracula defeated for the 3rd time, it is now time for our final playthrough, where we must do a full run of the game without using continues, but also collect every single hidden treasure of the castle in one go. But before starting with that playthrough, I decided to get the final boss challenge out of the way by finally getting the Frankenstein achievement by hitting Igor 10 times before killing the big guy, and getting what I would say is the most annoying achievement of the set. So with Frank dominated, we now go for the almost perfect run. And I decided to save this playthrough for last because now that we know all of the different strategies against the bosses, in other words, use the holy water, as well as the location of the hidden treasures, as long as we don't screw up royally, we will have a clear shot to the end. Alright, so yeah, I'm gonna wait for a bird to come from the left. Which might take a while, because yeah, I've gone for actual minutes without a... Oh, fuck you. Alright, we got it. Alright, let me at least get the... Never mind. And there we go. See, very easy. And there it is. Unbeatable Vampire Slayer. And with the first quest done, we now move on to the second quest, or New Game Plus, where similar to games on the NES like Super Mario Bros. Or Ghosts and Goblins, the second quest is a harder version of the game. But unlike those games I mentioned, the second quest in Castlevania might be contender for one of the worst New Game Pluses I've ever had the displeasure of completing. And it's mainly because of enemy spawns where we must deal with almost endless assaults from bats and especially Medusa heads. Although they're not the worst type of enemies we have to deal with. That said, we do have some extra treasure to collect in this second quest, so it's not just a clear run to the end. So let's go get them and finish this game once and for all. Stage 1, you want to crouch at this first statue to spawn the first second quest exclusive treasure. And once we enter the castle, we'll see what it's new about this quest. Enemies move faster, and we now have bats that will hit you no matter if you try to avoid them. And everything in this game deals 4 points of damage. Thankfully though, to compensate for this annoying aspect, we build up enough points in order to get the final score achievement, which is a godsend since score achievements are some of my least favorite achievements, since in the worst case, you have to play basically perfectly. For our next treasures, stand still in this window to spawn the next reward, and once we cross the door, walk towards this block to spawn a 1-up and get the last second quest treasure of stage 1. Stage 2, we must deal with Medusa heads for 95% of the stage while doing some out-of-place platforming in order to get some treasures. We also have this pointless wall meat here for some reason, but I guess it makes sense they put it here because of this bullshit enemy placement. For the first treasure, we take a jump on this ledge and you'll spawn a Moai statue? Wow, never would imagine I would get Chilean representation in Dracula's castle, but here we are. Thank you, Konami, for showcasing love to the best country of Chile. And in the Crusher section, stand between the first 2 of them and another 1-up will spawn, prolonging your suffering of the second quest, for better and for worse. Stage 3's only change is the presence of Medusa heads in the first part of the level, but besides that, the level stays the same. And as for the treasures, we have 2 more Moai statues. The first one you dug after climbing these stairs, where in order to get the Moai statue achievements, you must wait for the head to fully rise, although this achievement can be very inconsistent. And for the second head, strut through the Medusa heads at the beginning of the second block and hug this wall in order to spawn the final exclusive treasure of the second quest, which means that all that we have to do now is beat the second quest in order to master this game. Stage 4 starts with the worst room of the fucking game, as you now have to use the stopwatch in order to prevent the merman from blasting you up the ass and sending you to Davy Jones's locker. Now you can perform a very, and I mean very specific jump where you damage boost up this merman, allowing you to carry the holy water to Frank. But this single room is what made me realize how Konami just made this quest difficult for the sake of being difficult, and also unfair and not fun. However, if you manage to survive Stage 4 and Frank, in the most bizarre thing possible, the last 2 stages of the game are basically 1-to-1 with no changes whatsoever, which comes to show that after Stage 4, Konami just did not even try and gave up at the end. But because the last 2 stages are practically the same as Quest 1, if you manage to get through the stages no problem, you'll make it to the very end and achieve full victory against the Forces of Darkness. Hey, nice, okay. Oh my god, what am I doing? Hey, there it is. And there it is. Belmont's Destiny. And... time! In terms of quality, I'll give this set a 9 out of 10. I like all the challenge runs we must do in order to master this game. And I also like how we have different boss challenges besides the usual damageless rule, which shows different ways you can fight a boss in this game. The only reason this set is not a 10 is because the sub-weapon only achievements and certain boss achievements can be annoying to get. And I do wish we got at least one more challenge run, even though we'll talk about additional challenge runs later after reviewing this set. In terms of difficulty, this gets an 8 out of 10. I will admit that the only hard achievements are achievements that require some planning, like getting all the candles in the first and third blocks of Stage 5, or beating certain bosses using only the whip, as well as some boss challenges like Frankenstein and the mummies. But with trial, error, and pattern recognition, you can conquer every challenge this game has to offer. And as for fun, this game gets a 9 out of 10. For being the first game of a massive franchise, Castlevania 1 still holds up to this day, despite the fact that you may think that it will have first game syndromes, but surprisingly it doesn't have any, since because of the stiff jumping, the game was practically made with this jumping in mind. And despite that certain achievements and the second quest can be infuriating, this is still a wonderful set to go through and basically tries different ways of conquering the game and slowly making you a Castlevania expert. And as for the hardest achievement, because of Igor's random movements and the possibility to kill Frank early by accident, I'll give The Pride of Frankenstein the award for being the hardest achievement of the Castlevania NES main set. And yes, I said main set, because Castlevania does have a subset, which adds more challenge runs if you want more spice in life. Some of these runs include a damageless run through every stage, beating every level with a certain time remaining, beating the game using only the leather whip, and even some full game clears, like beating the game deathless, which also involves the second quest, so yay for that. To what I would say is the mother of all omelets here, Jack. And that is to beat the whole game without taking damage.
Are you serious?
And as someone who is decent at this game, I can honestly see myself mastering this subset. However, for the sake of time and not having to grind for certain achievements like the damageless or deathless achievements, I decided to omit this subset, but I can give you my word that I will eventually master the subset. But to compensate for my cowardice by not mastering the subset, I went out of my way to not only master the game on the Game Boy Advance, but also the original release of Castlevania, that being the Famicom version. So similar to Toy Story 2 and and Alien Trilogy, we have other versions of Castlevania that have achievement sets of their own. However, unlike the N64 version of Toy Story 2, where we have the same set as the PlayStation 1 version, but with less achievements, or what used to be the Dreamcast version, which was the exact same set with no changes whatsoever, both versions of Castlevania 1 have either changes to existing achievements from the NES set, or even exclusive version achievements. So let's take a look at them before wrapping up this video. Starting with the GBA version, which has 26 achievements, the exclusive achievements are having a fully powered whip, which for some reason is not an achievement for the NES version, which is something I now realized. We have achievements for collecting every sub-weapon of the game separately, uncovering every wall meat of the game, and as for existing achievements, the Moai statue achievements got fused into one, which means you must get all 3 of them in one go, and we also have the whip only challenge. But for this version, we have the strange change that you get the achievement the moment you kill the boss instead of getting the orb at the end. And for the final stage, you'll actually get it when you defeat Dracula's first form instead of the Cookie Monster. And speaking of the final stage, you actually need to do the entire stage, which means that if you get a game over against Dracula, you have to reset the game and start over. So much for being generous, am I right? If you want to start with a Castlevania set, I would honestly recommend the GBA version, since it's not only the version with the less amount of achievements, but it's also the version that slowly gets you into the grind of Castlevania, since you have the challenge of beating the game using only the whip, which, spoilers, the Famicom version also has it, but with a little asterisk. Now as for the quality of the GBA set, I will give this set a 7 out of 10, simply because the only challenge run is the whip only achievement, and despite the fact that we do have exclusive achievements, I actually do wish we actually get some boss challenges. In terms of difficulty, this gets a 6, mainly because, like I said in the whip only run portion of this video, the only hard parts about doing the game whip only are Frankenstein, death, and if you're not good at timing, Dracula can also be very annoying. But overall, the whip only run is very easy. And when it comes to doing the game without using a continue, yeah, if you know how to use your sub weapons, it is very easy to do. And as for fun, this gets an 8. And the reason it's not a 9, it's because of the things I mentioned in the quality set. And as for the hardest achievement for the GBA version, I'm going with whipping through the dungeons for beating stage 5 using only the whip. And finally, we have the Famicom version, Akumaju Dracula, which has a whopping 61 achievements. Now, compared to the NES set, this set has a bunch of changes, for better and for worse. For starters, the sub-weapon kill achievement now got split, meaning that you don't have to kill 20 enemies with all 4 sub-weapons in one go. Second, all item achievements now got split into 3, where we have an achievement for getting all candles in a stage, all hidden treasure in a stage, and every wall treasure in a stage. However, unlike the NES version, you actually must collect the item in order to get the achievement. And also, in a very stupid way, every single one of these achievements now apply for the entire stage instead of sectors, which means that if you missed a candle at the beginning of a level, you have to get a game over. And for the most part, every single stage is completely doable, with stage 5 being the scariest because you need the axe. But then we have the fucking clock tower, which, oh my god, I'm just going to let the footage speak for itself. You better give me that fucking thing, you son of a bitch. Where did I miss an item? Where did I miss a candle? Okay, so for some reason, yeah, there's supposed to be a candle right here, but for some reason, when I entered this room, it glitched out and it's no longer there. So, wow, so the level fucked me over because of a fucking glitch. I love it. And as for other challenge runs, the whip-only achievements now apply specifically to the boss fights, which means that the path to the bosses are not going to be as annoying as the NES or GBA versions. And as for new achievements, we now have the objectives of defeating 4 enemies with 1 sub-weapon used to rack up a combo, kill 5 enemies with the invincibility potion, get a double or triple shot with the stopwatch and get sad we can extend the chaos control, kill 4 or more enemies with a rosary, and we also have new second quest achievements, where we have to get the wall meat in 2-1, a hidden money bag in 3-1, and some wall money in 5-3. And finally, we have the most annoying and scary achievement, where we must beat both quests using 3 continues or less. And this is my least favorite achievement of the 3 sets overall, simply because of the problems I mentioned about the second quest, and also RNG bullshit specifically from the Merman Cave. Yes, this single room is the reason I fucking despise this achievement. So with all that said, in terms of quality, I will still, believe it or not, give it a 9 out of 10. And that is because, despite the fact that this game does have less achievements and also splits achievements from the NES versions into multiple achievements, I will say that at the very least, you don't have to be a full perfectionist in every single stage overall. Now granted, you still need to get everything throughout the entire stage, which means that if you reach the grand staircase and you miss something in the clock tower or the bridge, you have to reset the game in order to try again. But at the end of the day, I really do like how they changed the whip only achievement so that it only applies to the bosses, which means that in the best case scenario, you can actually master this game by just doing 2 playthroughs, which is something I did when I streamed this game. In terms of difficulty, this gets a 9, and that is mainly because of the first and second quest in less than 3 continues, just because if you fuck up royally on the second quest, you basically have to reset the game and try again, which in the worst case scenario, it can be incredibly infuriating. And as for fun, I'm giving this an 8 for the same reasons as difficulty, since the second quest is, like I said, the worst part of the game, and I hate everything about it. And as for the hardest achievement of Akumaju Dracula, I'm giving it to True Moxie for beating both quests in less than 3 continues. And that does it for the first Castlevania. And like I said during the fun stat of the NES set, even though this is the first game of the series, it doesn't suffer from first game syndrome unlike other games I know of. And at the end of the day, this is still an NES classic and definitely one of the greatest of the console. And one of the best things about all 3 sets is that they make you play the game with certain restrictions, which eventually leads to you getting better at the game and understanding how some mechanics of the game work. And that is what makes RetroAchievements shine compared to official PlayStation trophies, since RetroAchievements expects a player to become an expert at a game or chicken out as you try, which granted, that can be a good thing or a bad thing. Big thanks to Suspect 15, Salsa, and P. Manning Fan 1618 for the NES set, Galawis for the GBA set, and Backlog Audi for the Famicom set. And now that we've started our Vampire Killer legacy, I simply cannot wait to get to the other Castlevania franchises that are slowly becoming some of my favorite games of all time. And with a new game coming out this October, this is a good motivator to keep mastering this franchise and tackle games like Akumaju Densetsu, Castlevania 4, Castlevania Bloodlines, Rondo of Blood, Simon's Quest, The Adventure, Haunted Castle, the Metroidvanias with their annoying ass grinding. Is it too late to regret doing this franchise? Thank you so much for watching this RetroAchievements Mastery. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, and if you want to see more masteries, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified of future videos. For our next game, we finally fulfill a promise and master Lilo and Stitch Trouble in Paradise for the PlayStation 1, because yes, I have been meaning to master this game for so long now, but when I was planning to record it, I saw that the set was getting a revision, so I decided to delay it and wait for the revision to finish. But because I was so busy with other games and also wanted to prepare for the Spyro videos, I simply forgot about this game, but not anymore, because I'm mastering this game now, even if I die the next day. And yes, even though we're past the anniversary, I will not be doing Super Metroid yet, because in a very convenient way, I want to do Super Metroid as my 40th anniversary, which is very fitting since this year marks the 40th anniversary of the franchise. Even though Nintendo, being the great company they are, has done absolutely jack shit to celebrate the anniversary. This is why we have to rely on fans on doing the proper celebrations, because oh my god, Metroid Prime Origins is one of the greatest video games I've played in my entire life. And it released on August as well, so not only August is my birth month, but it is also the month where we get blessed with Metroid stuff, which I cannot be happier. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for watching this video. I'm Jonathan Wolf, and I will see you all in my next Retro Achievements Mastery. Later, Retro Achievers, and sweet dreams.